personal right to contest for the position of governor. When Obasanjo said you want to enter the court now, we can say that to all Nigerians can't say
Last year, August to be precise, was a terrible time for the residents of this local government. Patani is a local government in Delta State, and here is the River Niger, as you can see behind me. Now, what happened was that this river overflowed its banks, and the entire community of Patani was submerged underwater. We've come to find out how they grappled with that situation and what response are they planning in case the flooding comes again this year. Hello there, thank you for joining us on Head to Head. I am Victor Ayara. My guest on this edition of the program is Dr. Chris Ekiyor, who is a transitional chairman of Patani local government area, Delta State. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Victor. This time is on a different platform.
Different platform, yeah, you can say that. Let me ask you, how, when I see activists turn politicians holding public offices, I always ask, how is it on the other side? Here you are, you have been at the forefront of people that criticize policies of government, especially as they affect people, especially the ones that you do not find as, people-oriented as possible. But you are now in the saddle. How be it, briefly, what is life like on the other side? What is the reality?
Yeah, basically I must say that it's a different ball game altogether. But the exciting part of it is that you cannot be what you're not. So even when you are an activist and you find yourself in government, it is expected that you do the things that you preach, that you take a path that you have championed, even as a politician. Like I said, politics in itself is not a bad thing, but it's the way and manner that those who occupy those political offices carry out the activities of politics that has turned it to look like it is evil in this part of the world. So, as an activist, yes, some of the things that I may have advocated and said, this is how to do it, don't work in real terms, but it doesn't really deviate you from doing the right thing.
You talked about practicing what you preach. Do you practice what you preach?
Yeah, in all my advocacy as an activist, I've always said that the government must be with its people. The people must have an input in government. There must be a feedback mechanism, and your policies must be geared towards delivering the desires of the people. Now, when I came here, first it was a case of my appointment. I had been contacted by a very respected elder statesman to say that, look, arising from the fact that Delta State is yet to conduct its election, and the House of Assembly had passed in a motion and a law to say that there must be a transition government preceding the election, you have been so nominated to represent your people. That was just immediately preceding the flood. And I had said, my spontaneous answer was, no, no, no. And of course, the traditional ruler of my place and a lot of chiefs came to say, look, young man, we know you ran for House of Reps. We know that you probably may not want to take this because we've heard your position of issues, but this is just the way to go. We need you now at this moment, especially because of the roles you just showed that you're capable of putting people together and managing people arising from the flood.
Now, let's talk about the flood of 2012. What experience did you have, especially when over time people have come to say that there was a proliferation of camps, and of course so many things went down at the camps? What was your own experience? As we recall, you were right here in the midst of it all.
It was an issue of credibility. I was running a private camp with our NGO. We run a Rural Africa Health Initiative. It's an NGO that is meant to provide succor and respond to emergencies. And because we have previous experience, we responded in the Akwa Ibom State, we responded in Rivers State, we responded in Delta State, we responded in Cross River State in the Bakassi, and we had previous experience. And luckily, we've always had stockades of relief materials. So when the flood came, I responded. I responded because first, it was my place. Secondly, I was very convinced that government will not be prepared for it. So we moved in and set up a private camp. There were a lot of camps, some for profiting or profiteering, some just for genuine purpose of helping the people. But our camp became one of the survivalist camps because the government could not fault it. In fact, the government of Delta and Bayelsa State rated it as one of the best and most organized private camps when compared to any other camp that was self-sponsored. We ran it, we got a few donor items from good people of Nigeria, but we spent a lot of personal funds. And that in itself, where politicians were nowhere to be found in the LGA, I was standing down and doing my thing, even though I'd lost an election to 2011.
But were you doing that for your political gains, which obviously now you are the chairman of transitional chairman, howbeit, of Patani? Was it what you were looking at when you were doing all of those things?
Like I told you, I have a history of doing humanity service everywhere I go. Even as a student, I have a history of doing humanity service. This NGO started in school. It was public enlightenment, was supporting the weak, so that, the strong supporting the weak, and it became a medical organization. We have not stopped doing that. The NGO is still functional. We're still providing medical services for people at cheapest possible cost where necessary. So it's a passion, and it's quite different from the politics. In fact, my veering into activism and politics is to rise up for the weak. And when I attempted to contest, I knew there was a local government. I never wanted to be a local government chairman. And that's why I could have won any local government election in this place. I'm yet to see anybody who can win.
Would you say that your present position is a compensation for your loss at the election?
Well, I think it's part of it. It could be part of it. What PDP does as a party is an all-embracing party. Okay, you tried to run, you didn't run. There's so much space. If you're not elected, we can appoint you to be a commissioner or a minister. You all can play a role. And I was chosen for that responsibility.
Now let's look at the flood again. This was an incident, this was a natural disaster that so many people are yet to recover from. How has Patani recovered from that flood? And how do you, as a man at the helms of affairs now, how have you been able to make sure that the people under you have been able to get their lives back and get their lives back on track?
The recovery process will take a long time. If you say the people have recovered, I would say no. It will take a couple of years to recover. First, nobody was prepared for it. We never had this kind of experience. The rich also cried because nothing, particularly in this local government, there are 16 communities, every one of it was submerged. Victor, where you are sitting now was underwater, completely underwater. Completely under. You cannot realize that there's a pool around the corner here. You probably will see only rooftops and half windows. And this property was submerged. The streets behind us was like the River Niger itself, because it was just flowing into the River Niger. Then imagine those people who have old houses, 30 years old houses, or who had mud houses. All those things were gone with the flood. Crops, wildlife, all gone with the flood. So it was spontaneous. 44 days underwater. And by the time the water was gone, nothing was left. And people were so ill-prepared that they could not move anything. They were running away from the floodwaters. Those who they were looking for higher grounds. And then by the time they returned to come and rescue a few things, everything was underwater.
Of course, they cannot get 100% recovery of whatever they lost, especially the irreversibility of lives that were lost during that period. Now, what have you done, tangibly speaking, to make sure that, yes, I used to have a house, but I don't have a house anymore, but I can still look up to the administration with hope and renewed hope, for that matter, to continue to live in this environment?
Yeah, first we, as an NGO initially, we had moved in and we started a process of resettling people. We went, identified houses that were still salvageable, provided cement and zinc, and we started building that. And then I got appointed. And because I was already doing it as a private citizen, I immediately put the machinery going in place to take over the process of responding to the people. Basically, the first thing we did was to provide food, because there was no food anywhere. So there was a massive supply of rice, gari, palm oil, groundnut oil. The next one was to provide care for women and children. So we set up, the hospital was
So would you say that the people are already picking the pieces of their lives and moving on?
Once we put food on the table, we provided health, because there was a post-flood health challenge. Once we did that, we identified and clustered those who have been completely dislodged, and we provided some small grants for those families to be able to, put back their houses together, especially those who had mud homes. Small grants to be able to patch those homes, roof it with zinc, and move them. We couldn't have been able to attend to all those affected, and then families started putting themselves together. We also went a step further to take up the public utility bills away from everybody, water rates, electricity, so that those funds they would have put in that cost can now be channeled to their welfare and upkeep. And then we provided small quick win jobs for those who had capacity to do a few things as a model for recovery. The local government is small, and we're responding second per second to challenges as they show up.
Now let me ask you, in all of this, we are right now in a rainy season. Another rainy season is here. How prepared are you as a local government in the unlikely event or in the likely event that we experience another torrential downpour or the overflowing of the riverbanks?
Yeah, you see, I listened to NIMET and a whole lot of the other meteorological institutions talking about the flood, and it gives us cause to worry. You see, in other areas that are not Ijaw predominantly or other communities, Lokoja, Asaba, all those other Adamawa, the story may be different. If they open up drains and they channel water to the River Niger, then maybe flood water would be contained within there. If they leave the floodplain to higher grounds. But in Ijaw areas, there is a problem. Where the people predominantly occupy is the waterfront by the riverside. And the reason for that kind of settlement is that the waterfront is usually far over above sea level, because the river is below sea level. Just behind that high ground is a complete swamp that is far, far below sea level. So in almost every Ijaw community in the swamp area of Niger Delta, including the Shekris and other people living within the riverine, the water bed behind the settlement, linear settlement on the water side, is far below, such that the swamp there, even in the normal rain, you could have ponds and all that in the swamp. So the scenario will be that if we're looking at heavy downpour, opening up of drains and all that may help to a level. But if we're looking at a combination of downpour and the opening up of dams, you open drains, the drains will become channeled from swamp water, back river swamp water, to flow into town, and river water. So you find the town compressed between two sources of water. But what we're doing is public enlightenment, identifying higher grounds and preparing our people, and then monitoring the water saturation of the soil and the tidal volume in the water side. The combination of these two will let us create a signal and evacuate our people now to a high ground. Luckily, we have a previous experience. We have also begun to sensitize them that they should begin to put their valuables together in movable containers. So once we say, look, the flood is here, we'll be able to move them. So there will be minimal loss. There will be practically nothing in the areas you will do to stop the flood from coming. If you dig canals, the canals will be quick access.
Proactive response, evacuation of people.
It's very key. So
what?
People,
okay.
Search, we've identified the highest plane. These are usually on the road, east-west road, axis, construction site where have been properly sand-filled. Ordinarily, we should be able to sand-fill the water banks, but we don't have that capacity as local government. And even when the government needs to take it, you need a couple of months to sand-fill, like what's happening in Lekki now. Bar Beach now. You raise above water level and people can live on those plains. We're also working hard with the state government to ensure that in the evacuation process, the state government should this time site a proper camp within the local government area, because it's difficult to really move people from their aborigin. I do not see how an Ijaw man will comfortably be relocated to an Yoruba man's place, and the Yoruba man will comfortably embrace him. It's almost not possible when you say people should relocate. But we will be proactive. We will encourage people to move valuables, move themselves. Immediately we notice that the saturation level is high. Meantime, expecting that the rain volume is going to be high, what we're doing is opening up new drains, constructing drainages, and channeling water, opening up block drains, so that the rain volume can be contained within the water plains.
All right, the program is still head-to-head, and we have been having this chat with Dr. Chris Ekio, who is a transition